A revolutionary. Say whoa. Trap revolutionary. Got the wave of too scary. Doing this thing like Malcolm ain't by any means necessary. We ain't got it by no one seen hand. We got the master plan. Get the movement going on. Right here where we stand, man. We bucking and stumping, fist pumping. Even though they tried to set us up for failure and kill us, we keep on coming. That's why somebody gotta step up and say something about the bullshit. Because if not, the blind gon' keep leaving.
What's going on, y'all? Y'all want to do this video in reference to Karmelo Anthony's conviction.
Breaking news tonight, a Collin County jury has just sentenced Karmelo Anthony to 35 years in prison for the murder of Austin Metcalf at a Frisco track meet. More reaction from the trial and the emotional victim impact statements.
This verdict sends a clear message. Violence like this won't be tolerated in our Collin County community, and we remain committed to protecting our schools and standing with victims and their families.
Strong emotions outside the courtroom all day long as the verdict came down and the sentencing happened. What our crew saw and heard today in McKinney.
After a 4-day trial, like really quick trial involving him being accused of murder or whatever. The aftermath, him having the altercation with Austin Metcalf and him stabbing him and killing him. So it's a lot going on with it. There's his brother Willie D. He actually mentioned they have shut down Karmelo's Give and Go fund. And come to find out, the fund was, had amassed like $630,000. So they shut it down, stating that, basically funds can be used if a person is accused, but after a person is convicted, they don't support a platform. Their platform does not support a person using the funds for anything after they are convicted of a crime. So those funds supposedly go back to the donors, people that donated the funds. So it's just so much going on. I don't know, man. I am, I'm just, I'm just thinking about it in an aspect of, I think I don't think, but from the way, the jurors were struck, three black, jurors, were struck saying they were educators or whatever. Maybe they would be unfit to be jurors on this, on the jury panel. That's a major blow, blow to the defense, major factor. Then it's coming out now that his father, I believe his parents are saying they, they hired a white attorney. And I can understand, because it's a give and take. The attorney will give Karmelo away for a favor. That happens, in this so-called judicial system, possibly knows the some of the people, judges, maybe, prosecutors, some family members, or something, related to them, so that happens, to where, attorney will, sacrifice their client so they can get a favor later on. Or they may have owed a favor, to somebody in in that court. It happens all the time, and a young black man was basically sacrificed, so that's a tragedy, and also in talking, a friend of mine earlier about it, like, what happens is, our young black youth, are they're used for fodder for prisons. And the brother, Dennis Sperling, he was on Willie D's show the other day as well. You know what I'm saying? He shed a lot of light, about the system as well. It's a beast that you have to keep feeding. You have all these, especially in Texas, you got over 135 prisons, if I'm not mistaken. Over 100 or so prisons, 135, somewhere around there. So, and that prison population is probably around maybe over 100,000, maybe 200,000. So that's something that those prisons can't go empty. That's the truth. They're not going to let those prisons go empty. So you get as many convictions as you can to keep the prisons, full, and to keep the cycle going, keep the beast fed. That's the true reality of it. You know what I'm saying? I hate that it's like that, but that's the reality, So, man, I hate that happened to that young brother. And then, you had somebody that was stating that, man, and this is very like inane, man. For you had a guy to say, Karmelo, he practices law in Collin County, black guy. And Karmelo will get life in prison because of the hate that is taught amongst black families toward white people. That is ingrained in the culture, and that he's going to suffer because of that. That he made a bad decision and he stabbed Austin Metcalf because of the cultural hate that has been fostered between black families and white families, or white people. Black people hating white people. But I stated that that's inane. I mean, that it makes no sense, because why would you got black families that you got a multitude of black families. There's so many different aspects of black families and the dynamics of black families that it's like you just have every black family in America sitting around teaching their children hate. I don't know where you get that from, but that is a very ignorant way of thinking. And then another thing is this: if you really want to be truthful and real about it, where does the hate come from? Where did the hate even start? Mainly that hate has been instigated, perpetrated, proliferated, perpetuated by mainly white families hating and teaching their children to hate black people, black families, black men, black women, to continue the system of white supremacy and white domination. Like, the honest to God truth, that's the nature of America and the nature of the society and this particular culture, American culture. So for you to say that black families do that, we don't, no. That's your name, man. Moving forward, so I want to talk about that. Also, like I said, the system, it gives different outcomes, and the brother made mention of this as well on his show the other day, that, and I say the same thing as well. Like, okay, had this been a 210-pound, 6'1" black boy that pushed a so-called bullied a 5'7", these are the stats of Austin Metcalf. Austin Metcalf is 6'1", 210. Karmelo Anthony is 5'7", about 150, maybe 160 pounds. So we reverse the roles. Say Austin Metcalf is a black boy, 6'1", 210 pounds. Karmelo is a young white boy, young white man, young white male at 5'7", 140, 50, 60 pounds. This case would have been totally different. We know from, American society, the way, and there's two systems, one for white and one for black. And it's been that way. You know what I'm saying? From this, I would say this inception of prisons, prison systems, jails, coming out of slavery. Because as I stated before, the 13th Amendment says there's involuntary, servitude will be abolished, is abolished, except for the punishment of a crime. And so we seen droves of black men, just laws created, why I said black codes, created, and people taken to jail for, if you throw some trash down, if you maybe sitting down on the side of the road, maybe if you sitting down in the front of the store, maybe if you looking at a white person wrong, you know what I'm saying? Like these were like people were locked up for like literally no reason, so that happened to create a labor class, continue, and as I said before, for the slaveholding states to continue their slaveholding ways. Down here in the South, Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, for sure they don't pay their prison. You know what I mean? So, just in those three states, but you got a number of other southern states, so, to continue to keep that labor class, unpaid labor class, and they use black bodies to continue to fulfill that class or to fulfill that labor force that they need to basically no wages, to pay no wages and continue to keep that labor class so they can make the most they can off of that labor class. They just figured out another way to do it. And they did it by the 13th Amendment. Just basically create a loophole and say, here you go. This is how we'll do this. We're gonna abolish slaves, say it's not allowed anymore, it's illegal, but we'll give y'all a loophole, to continue y'all slaveholding ways. So that's basically what happened, So in saying that, with the prisons, so many prisons are have been built, and to continue to feed that beast, things like this happen. It'd have been a no bill if the roles were reversed. If it was a 6'1", 210 black boy versus the 5'7", 140, 50 pound, maybe 60 pound black boy, it would have been a no bill. Two different systems, and that has been in place, like I said, since the inception of the prison system, or you want to say after slavery was abolished. Just continue to fulfill that labor class. They want a labor class, and you break it down to the statistics and you factor in, like I said, the history of it. That's what's going on. That's why Karmelo, suffered the fate he suffered. It's always about black bodies feeding the beast. They would want our so-called, I'm not gonna call it subservient, a so-called, what in their minds, a subservient class to feed the beast and fulfill that system, that labor class that they need. Cheap labor class, unpaid labor class, that they want to continue to control. So and black bodies are the ones they feeding that system on. So that's what we need to understand first and foremost. And like I said, and I'm gonna keep saying, had it been the roles would have been reversed, it was a 6'1", 210 pound black kid pushing a little so-called white kid smaller than him, it would have been a no bill. Never would have been on trial in the first place. And then if he did end up going to trial, not guilty, it did the same thing. This guy and up here to kill this little black boy in the store, to sit here and like gave him not guilty. And they actually said it was black jurors on the. It's like stuff like this. Like I hate to even talk about it. because it's so frustrating, for this stuff to keep on happening, man. And it's like what can we do about it? And I did pose some solutions as well. South Carolina, Rick Child found not guilty. Cyrus Carmack Belton, killing, young Cyrus Carmack Belton, 14-year-old, saying he stole some water, man. It's like, that's unjustified for you to kill a young man like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's always something like for black people to continue to get the short end of the stick, and it's because of that culture. So this black man said the culture because Karmelo Anthony he killed Austin Metcalf because of the culture of hate, you know what I'm saying, that is engendered or taught in black families' homes, when the fact is the culture of hate is taught in American society against black people, people of African descent, black people in general. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so many facets of black people. We come from Africa. We were already here on this land, native to this land, And that's a whole nother story. They grouped us all in the class saying we're all Negroes. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, the evidence and the facts and the truth is there. We're native to this land. Some of us have, like my dad, my grandmother was a black Indian. You know what I'm saying? So some of us were already native to this land. But anyway, continuing on with the story, that is fostered in this society to hate black people, people that have black skin, melanated people in this land, to hate us. And that's why the system is like it is, So, yeah, I would never say that. And then another thing is that, some people are only, they're like, oh man, and I'm not worried about that. You know what I'm saying? Don't have nothing to do with me or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's a lot of people, a lot of black people in the system that have faced this fate, right? It's a lot of us, right? But it needs to be talked about. Our stories what happened to me? What happened to my homeboy? Some of us, man, we need to get on here and talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Instead of like, oh man, that don't matter, or it's a lot of people that don't suffer that fate in the system. Yeah, that's why, like I said, what can we do about it? A multifaceted approach. Some of us need to get on here and talk about what happened to us. Some people need to be political about it. You know what I'm saying? Some people need to be able to, and I said even a situational awareness, you know what I'm saying, or environmental awareness, which the brother Dennis Spurn, the brother Dennis, he actually mentioned as well. You know what I'm saying? Maybe not move in an area that's predominantly white. You know what I'm saying? So, that's Dennis Sperling. He mentioned that, like, maybe not move in an area that's all white, because if something happens like this is pretty much what you're gonna face. Unfair, jury, process, striking jurors, facing pretty much an all-white jury, trial lasting 4 days. Then you end up with an attorney, a white attorney that you are now, now it's coming out unsatisfied with, that probably gave a favor, gave Karmelo as, like, seriously. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I'm not gonna really, challenge it like that. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna kind of let some things ride. We're gonna go ahead and let them convict him instead of just really going all out and fighting for his life, like literally fighting for his life. Because what's gonna happen, even if the case gets overturned, gets a new trial, he's still gonna go to prison and spend at least 2 years at the least just to get the appeal. Then another year or so or two, getting back to have another trial, and to try to get, out of the situation. Hopefully he can get another trial and they can, possibly, give him not guilty or maybe time served, something of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Maybe come down on the charge instead of being murder, manslaughter, something like that. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I would say. He's still gonna do time. At the least 2 to 4 years. You know what I'm saying? So that's why, yeah, you know what I'm saying, things like that, being aware, like, hey, environmental words, you might not want to stay, where all these white people at, and probably do you dirty if something like this occurs, where you got to fight for your life, you know what I'm saying, or somebody's hateful towards you because the color of your skin, you know what I'm saying? Then when you do get in the so-called judicial system, it's you know what I'm saying? It's the whole system is pretty much hindered, you know, towards you. You know, it's hindered towards your defense. It's been hindered. You know what I'm saying? So for you to defend yourself, it's like it's pretty much difficult or pretty much non-existent. You know, so you know, I would say that, you know, and like I said, you know, I had to say something about it because yeah, man, you know, the whole system it's rigged towards our demise. You know, the system wants to continue to feed young black men in that system, in that beast, you know, to continue to use us at will, you know, to the system's will. And that system is to use black men as a cheap labor source, you know, or to continue to incapacitate us so we can't vote, we can't own guns, we can't have certain rights, you know, certain, even, I was also, not only that though, even as a population control, you know, so our numbers, you know, don't continue to proliferate, you know, keep that population size, you know, stagnant or at a certain level, you know, a certain percentage, you know, so even in that sense, you know, so it has to be talked about, you know, and I would say like, our people out there, and I would say this too, I say just provide solutions. Hey, we got to be political about it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like for real, local level voting, you know, like making sure like we take care of that. So things like this don't happen, you know, make sure our numbers are represented properly, you know, wherever we are, you know what I'm saying? Need to have judges, you know what I'm saying? Certain, even in the sense of defense, prosecutors, you know what I mean? You know, where we can have certain politicians, you know, in city council, whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? Where our people, you know, come in as we can, you know, be a part of the jury pool or whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? So in that sense, you know, make sure we take care of the local, voting or political, elections and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Then I said, you know, like number two, it would be, you know, us actually grouping together and fighting this thing, protesting, you know, out even in that sense. You know, we gotta pray, and people been doing that too. People doing a good job about that, you know, actually protesting, you know what I'm saying, actually coming together and grouping together in that sense, you know, like really, you know, putting up a putting up a solid protest, man, to show like, hey, we can't accept this, you know. And then, you know, I also say, you know, yeah, we have to, you know, all else fails, man. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to be, you know, you have to get physical about it, you know. And, you know, I know sometimes, man, you know, nobody wants to wage a war. Nobody wants to do anything, and you know that could cause, you know, conflict, could cause some major, you know, problems. But then sometimes, man, if you're just not treated right, you know, you have to become physical about it. So I would say it's not just one thing, you know, because I know some of us like, oh, we're gonna pray about it, we're just gonna march about it, we're gonna protest about it, right? You know what I'm saying? Some people be like, nah, that's not gonna work. You know, we need to just, you know, we need to vote about it. You know, we ain't gonna, you know, the protesting ain't gonna work. We done marched, we done did all these years on top of years, nothing has worked for us protesting and marching about it, right? You know, and then some people like, nah, you're gonna get yourself killed. You can't get physical about it. You can't go to war with nobody because we don't have the numbers, right? But I would say it's a multifaceted, you know, process, you know, and progress, you know, that we have to be a part of, you know. We literally have to, because I would say, and it showed us, just being political about it don't work sometimes. Just protesting and marching don't work sometimes. Same thing about being militant. It don't work. Just only that, it don't work. So it has to be a multifaceted process, you know, and progress that we have to embark on. You know, so we can't be scared. You know what I'm saying? Because that's why you have, and listen to why I say that, that's why you have different branches of government. You know, that's why you have different aspects of law and different executive, judicial, and legislative branch. You know, so executive, you know, you're gonna do the make the orders, you know, or what can the laws, you know, what's enforced in law. Judicial, you know, who goes to court, who's judged, and then the legislative, you know, legislative process, you know, where who's making the laws. You know, so in that sense, like we need to have a multifaceted process, man, in the taking care of us, you know, to making sure, what I'm saying in reference to this God has said, our culture that's teaching hate, so we'll have a multifaceted process and progress towards the hate in this culture against us. You see what I'm saying? The word we suffer like Karmelo and others. You know, and shout out to my brother, like I talked to you earlier, you know what I'm saying? You probably didn't realize what I was saying, but so we would have something against this. So many of my people, as you said, that's in the system, won't suffer. It's a lot of stories out there. We know that, you know what I'm saying? But we have to make some type of effort and multifaceted process and progress against this system to where it's, like I said before, it uses us as fodder to continue to feed the beast. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah, I would just say that, man. You know what I'm saying? We have to do something about it, you know? And like I said, even like we're making videos like this, we got to speak about it, you know, wake our people up. You know, the ones that pray that don't realize, they probably ain't thinking about it. Like, man, you know, yeah, but realize, you know, this is what's going on. Like I said, since the 13th Amendment to the inception of prison, black codes against our people, man. You know what I'm saying? To use us, like I said, as a cheap labor source. They look at us as like, hey, we not really worthy. We not a class to be respected. You know, we're not really considered citizens, really. If you want to think about it, we're second-class citizens. You know, and they treat us as such. So yeah, that's what we need to do. That's the way we need to actually, you know, make some type of effort to challenge this system and how, like I said, it uses us or hinders us in every facet, you know, of this American society. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but anyway, let me get up off here. I just had to say that. Yeah, you know, let's work, man. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm gonna keep on coming with it. You know, that's why I even created this channel. You know, revolutionary thoughts. I'm gonna express what I know. You know, it might help somebody else. But anyway, I'm gonna get up out here, man. Just want to say that. You know, I hope everybody out there doing well. You know, living life full of love and happiness. Strive for greatness every day, man. You know, just being great. You know, but until next one, y'all. You know, I appreciate everybody out there looking at my videos, liking, sharing, and everything. Till next one, y'all. Love y'all. All right, y'all.
Fuck it, go ahead and blow off the dough. Step through the maze, man, and became amazing. About to rewrite history and change a page in a crooked book that never told us the true story. Like how we were kings and queens before the slave story, before the killing, stealing, and drug dealing on some real shit. We ran the world.